Hey, hello. This is Justine.
And I'm Alicia, excited to be back. We are here with Woo Manufacturing, where we talk about all the things that happen being women in manufacturing and what we can do to make sure we're heard and we can succeed in our careers.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, today I wanted to talk about leading by influence. I started my career as a project engineer, process engineer, various roles where I didn't have direct reports, but I had to lead teams and get people to kind of help me be successful. And I wanted to chat about this. And I'm going to tease Justine for a minute because I sent her the prompt to discuss this as a potential topic. And she was like, "Oh, I don't have a lot of experience with that. I think you'll have to lead this." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Literally, your whole career, Justine, is leading by influence, and you're very successful at it." And I know that we're on the same page now, but it made me laugh really hard.
Yeah. No, it is funny because I've never held a role where I am in charge of anybody directly. I have had no direct reports. And yet, when I was responsible for process lines, it ultimately was up to me to ensure that materials were getting there, that my labor was well trained and safe when working with the equipment, that anyone coming in and doing design changes was keeping everybody adequately informed. And in order to kind of command that responsibility, I couldn't rely on a title to give me authority. I kind of relied mainly on interpersonal interaction and keeping people informed on how their work is impactful to the floor, right? And yeah, when we were discussing this topic, I was looking at it, and I think that this is just a classic communication breakdown because I read your email probably like half awake. I was like, yeah, sure. That all sounds good. You seem like you have stories and thoughts, so we'll just let you run with it and I'll just respond. And then we hopped on a chit chat call just because we like to catch up. And you reiterated the prompt and kind of poked fun at me because you're like, bro, this is all you ever do. And I was, oh, in about 15 milliseconds of us actually talking to each other instead of just reading an email, I totally re-understood what you were getting at. And I totally agree. That's like the most influence that we have had when you're not actually a manager or something similar.
Yeah, and I just found it challenging at first in my career because nobody prepares you for that.
Mm.
And I think I've said this before. I think I can count on one hand and maybe only 3 digits good leaders that I've had in my career that have actually been able to help me grow in both the technical side as well as the interpersonal side. And so I was just kind of fending for myself. And, in one of my particular roles at the pancake brownie company, I was essentially in charge of the whole capital plan. I was the only engineer at the plant. And so I had to basically plan all this myself. And I had to pull in all of the stakeholders and people that I was going to need to help me be successful. So that included quality, maintenance, operations, other departments, other contractors, all of that. And it was like, you know, they could really hold me back. They could make this not successful. And I know that I don't know all this stuff. It was early in my career. I was in my 20s. I didn't know about, access platforms and things like that and the importance
Mm-hmm.
of it. So, what I did in that particular instance was I knew what I wanted to go with in some circumstances. I knew I wanted to get this checkware because I already looked at, cost, service, capability, but I got quotes and information from 3 different checkware companies, for instance. So I would have a meeting with all my project team, and I would, give them here are the options, here's my recommendation. I want to hear what you guys have to say, and just ask for feedback. And so, I mean, a little bit, I was kind of like, here's the direction I want to go, but I was leaving it open so that if somebody found an issue with my selection or brought up a capability that I didn't even think about, then I could change course. And in that, it allowed people to feel involved. They felt like their opinion mattered, and I'm bringing them in at the very beginning of the project before we make any selections, and it just helps motivate people to want to help you be successful. And in a lot of circumstances, I was telling this story to Justine, and I left out the part of like where people helped me. It was more like, yeah, I just had to make them feel like they were involved, and then it came off really shitty. But in the reality of it is like, no, I got so much good information from them. We added access. I was building a sugar silo. We added maintenance access per people's feedback. I got a lot out of those conversations versus just doing it to check boxes. And so that's like the biggest one that I think of in my career, and I continue to try to use those tactics to just really engage people so that when it comes to commissioning time and all that, everybody's in it. They understand why we're doing it. They understand the ROI, they understand the business case and all the intricacies, and it just helped the whole thing be successful for my company. So yeah, I mean, I want to hear from you, Justine, like how you handled it, because you're still young and early in your career, and same thing, like you didn't always have people to teach you what to do. It was a free-for-all when we worked together. So like,
Mhm.
what helped you be successful in that sense? Because I am 100% confident you were successful. I saw it every day we worked together.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for acknowledging that and calling me out on it, because it is something that um, I think I kind of approached pretty naturally. We've talked about it before, where we consider ourselves to be what we call systematic thinkers, which means we acknowledge that there are multiple pieces that need to fall into place to make a smooth production, right? I need the materials to hit the floor at the right time. I need those materials to be in spec. I need the equipment to be up. I need it to be healthy. I need, and in order for things to be healthy, you need to make sure that you're allowing maintenance to come in as needed, that changes are clear to everybody else. And so, a big piece of it to me is just, if you acknowledge that you're in what you might think of as like an ecosystem, that there's a lot of pieces that like I can't produce unless I get materials here, and I can't get materials here if supply chain and quality aren't in lockstep, if that
Yep.
makes sense. And so it is really important to acknowledge the worth of their work, and also to have them realize the impact of a slowdown in their space, right? If they starve us of materials, we're down. And if we're down, then we're not producing. And if we're not producing, we're not a company. So
Yep.
it's really, really helpful to me, first, to have the step back and to see the flow of what needs to happen and when, and what are like precursor steps. And then on top of it, and I don't know if this works for everybody, but at least personally, if I know what value I'm bringing and how important my work is, even if the day to day, like say a quality person gets a specialized part in and they need to take like 30 measurements on it, and they're doing it and it feels monotonous and they feel like they're typing it into the spreadsheet and nobody's ever looking at it, And ideally, everything's in spec and we never look at the data that they're generating. But if the stuff isn't in spec, then their work becomes super helpful, super imperative for us to figure out where the problem came from. And so for me, it's always valuable to know who's doing what work and to let them know that what they're doing is imperative to us continuing. Um, I think empowerment's a really big tool in getting people to kind of trust you, because if you can acknowledge what they're doing as value add, it not only humbles you, which engineers always need, but it also makes people appreciate the work that you do as well, and makes them know that you're on their side, that ultimately you're just trying to do what's best for the process line, but more broadly the company. Um, and not like the company matters and you're just a cog, but more of like you play an actual role in this and what you do is important. And if people feel important, they're much more willing to do not only quality work, but work like on time, which helps everybody. I
Absolutely.
think that's something that's worth keeping in mind.
I think it's really important because it from the leadership side, which has become an important piece of my career, if you don't tell the people why they're doing what they're doing,
Hmm.
then how do you expect them to be excited about it or, be engaged? And I see this happen a lot. A lot of the executives and higher up middle managers think that, oh, they don't need to know that. Like, just I'm just going to tell them to do this thing. They should just trust that they need to just do this thing because there's a
Hmm.
broader vision. But yeah, you can do it that way, but you're not going to have a good culture and you're probably not going to end up having a good work product because the people are not in it and they're going to half ass it. So, assigning work is totally acceptable and it's something you need to do. But if you assign it while telling them where that fits in the pieces in the puzzle and what value it's going to add, it's just, you're going to go a lot further.
Yep, absolutely. And you make a more empowered team. Like you don't get to synergy, this word that I use at least annoyingly a lot. For those of you who don't live in the buzzword world that we do, synergy is when the sum of all the work that individual contributors are giving adds up to a greater total than what the face value of those things are. In essence, the work that the group does together as a team is greater than what each person could do individually. And I really do believe in that. But synergy doesn't happen when you silo groups.
Hmm.
So some cultures reward um, individual groups either outperforming other groups. So you get kind of like infighting almost, where like, okay, if this group wants more funding or more clout, they need to look really good. And a strategy to looking good is to making other teams look weak or small, um, which might work. But now you are eating yourself, right? A healthier way, instead of pushing down others to get taller, is to bolster the whole group. And ultimately, your peer feedback is, look, this person's a great team player. They don't care if their name is on it. They just want us to do well. And they also acknowledge that if this team is doing well, that they feed into the next chain. And overall, if we're all strong, then we're going to get to the goals that we set as a company. Um, it's just nice to acknowledge that everyone plays a part, and that um, no matter how important you individually are, you cannot do the work that other people do. And you cannot understand the work that other people do, even if you think that you have a good grasp, like the nitty gritty of what other people are contributing, you just won't understand. And it's a really healthy thing to acknowledge that other people have worth in the play.
Yeah.
Um, and then ultimately, um, if you are looking for personal success, it does make you come off really good if you acknowledge other people's work. You help other people with their work. If there's something in their way that you can help influence through connections that you have, or even sometimes people get really frustrated because of how long something's taking. And if you know the context of to why something's taking so long, you're like, oh, the designers have been working on this because they got news from one of our suppliers that they can't provide, I don't know, sheet metal in this thickness. So now they have to redo all of their calculations for the new sheet metal thickness to ensure that it meets strength specifications, right? But the floor just thinks that the design engineers are chatting and hanging out and like not communicating. And if you're siloed, where the designers sit in one area and the workers on the floor sit in another area and neither side communicate, then of course it's going to translate to animosity both ways. Because somebody's like, well, I can't work because this group's being lazy. And that's not rarely the case. Like, it's rarely malicious. It just isn't well communicated what the problem is.
You know, as a controls engineer, I don't know anything about people, you know, expecting us to go faster or not understanding our context.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'll still never forget the, you know, like my first week, I got a pressure transmitter put on my desk by an engineer, and he's like, I need you to get this installed. And then he comes back an hour later. Hey, is this done yet? Can I see this on the HMI? And I'm just like, what? Like,
Do you think
it
that I
needs to
work by
be
magic?
wired. Huh?
Do you think I work by magic?
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, I guess we are magicians, but so I end up being an over communicator, and I think that's gotten me in trouble a little bit, but I don't even care because I want everyone to know, and it is in trying to do what you were just describing, Justine, where everybody understands and you're kind of educating people on the hurdles that you run into. And some of it lead back to really early engineering decisions, like we just bought this off-brand PLC that I have to get communicating. Nobody understands that means I have to get a separate piece of hardware. I have to do this extra programming thing. And you know, so I just educate people, and they may not like the answer, but that's the reality of it. And then hopefully over time people will know, okay, let's bring in Alicia early. Let's see what she actually needs versus just being pissed that, you know, it's taking them longer than not Alicia, but these executives expected for a controls commissioning or integration to happen. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it helps also, if you are in management, to talk to the people performing the work. Ideally, workers that you trust the quality of their work, to know how long things take. I think you and I have both experienced where people make like PowerPoint presentations without actually talking to anybody performing the work. And they'll set things like, oh, equipment. So we'll do concrete pour this day. The equipment will land this day. It will be installed, and all the plumbing and piping put together by this date. And everything will hit the floor here, right? And then their PowerPoint shows that they are producing stuff from that equipment like 3 days later.
yeah.
Or something just obscene, because nobody has scheduled commissioning time. And commissioning is vastly important for safety, to ensure that even though the equipment's installed, that it's installed correctly, and B, controls, to ensure that everything in the script and the interface is actually landing to the correct places, doing the right things, right? I put this button here to open and close. When I push this button, does it open? When I untoggle it, does it close? And is it opening and closing just this thing, right? Because there's a bunch of feedback from a bunch of different things that you have to check in order to hand to somebody later who's not going to check that it's working. They're just going to push the button. And because they're not expected to check it because they're doing a bunch of other things, right? But commissioning doesn't happen in 3 days, or it shouldn't. for a reasonably complex set of equipment or a reasonably large set of equipment that is potentially dangerous if it's not working the way you think it is.
Yep.
Or the worst, that you're like not even given any time to program it. It's like they landed the equipment. Are we ready? And you're like, hello? No. Wiring it does not mean that I have feedback.
Or when you buy a whole scrubber system and don't realize there's no motor controls, and then I have to go get panels in 4 to 5 weeks during a global supply chain issue, you know, those things. But my favorite one is people think that the plumbing and the electrical can all happen at the same time. So that's how they build the schedule. And it's like, no, like you want these guys on top of each other, and you know the plumbers are going to actually put up the steel to actually hold where the conduit goes, but you got to get the plumbing in first. And I know I'm just going down a rabbit hole of technical blah blah blah, but just I live and breathe this world. But you know, by the end, I think people started to learn that, oh, Alicia knows how all the parts and pieces go together and how you would actually successfully create a schedule with all the right interdependencies. And so by the end, I was working with the project managers to actually build out the whole schedule, even areas that are way outside of controls, because, you know, I've been living this life for a while, and, you know, I don't know. It's now I feel like I'm being really ranty, but anyway, I wanted to move on to, how do we recognize signs of resistance or people withholding information or not fulfilling their responsibilities, and like what can we do about it? So I have some ideas, but Justine, I'm curious if you had any experiences and how you handled it.
See, this is an interesting prompt because although I have a lot of intensity at work, and act very tough, at my core, I don't think of people being intentionally malicious, right? So most of my experience with timeline slipping or problems arising is because people weren't well informed on, look, I need you to get this piece done so that you can unlock all of the next steps, right? I need sometimes as a manager like approval of a certain thing or a drawing, but usually it's like I need you to send this drawing to a supplier and get a quote back from them now so that I can proceed forward knowing that I have somebody to supply it. Or I need to know that our typical supplier can't make what we just asked for and we have to reiterate this design to make sure that it works or something similar, right?
Yeah.
The is an instance where it was not really malicious, but people just didn't want to get in trouble, I want to say, is withholding critical information. So, for instance, in a new technology, you could have operating parameters, but the operating parameters don't sound as good. Like maybe it's a really slim temperature range that something can work in. And it would be better to a customer if it worked in a wider range. So you just don't, you kind of omit the true breakdown of the materials, and you just hope that they don't run it in like really aggressive temperature ranges or something like that.
Yeah.
Now that's super problematic later, right? Because maybe somebody's selling your product and they're telling customers that it's fine in a wider range than it actually is. And it becomes detrimental later because now the designers are tasked with fighting like physical realities or entropy or trying to buy like more expensive materials or something to fulfill something that you promised to somebody. So that's kind of like an example of like a technical group not wanting to look bad. And ultimately kind of shooting themselves in the foot because they were just not being transparent about where a product currently stands, or if somebody has to do a lot of work to do a price point change to say, if you need to work in this higher or lower temperature range, this is the cost that it would be, right, for more expensive materials or something else. But I think you might have experienced something different where teams we're doing kind of like what I had mentioned before, where they make a group look small so that their group looks big.
Yep.
And that's a more deliberate thing that is kind of nefarious. And I think you would have better experience in recognizing that
Yeah.
and circumventing that.
Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that you're right. Like in a lot of cases, people are trying to do the right thing and they don't have bad intent, and for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable and to give you the information, or they have other barriers, and that comes back to culture. I like to have a psychologically safe space for everyone
Mm-hmm.
to make it okay to hear the bad news. I mean, I had an executive tell me that he hates when I give him the bad news, and he told me like how to manage up, which was basically fluff him a little bit, like say, "Oh yeah, yeah, this is going to work. Oh, I got you. This is going to work." And then like ease him into now tell him why it won't work. I'm like, "What kind of BS is this?" But whatever, at least he was honest about what he needs. I mean, I found it to be completely stupid, but uh but yeah, I mean, now, I think more recently I've run into some scenarios where people were malicious and they were really trying to make me look bad or my team to look bad, and there was a lot of finger pointing. But again, that comes back to culture and the way things are set up, and what looks good to the higher ups in that just really shitty culture is kind of cutthroat and saying what people want to hear and then paying for the consequences via throwing your own team under the bus or other teams in that instance. So I guess couple things. I think you assume good intent always to start out with. You talk to people and find out more information, and sometimes you'll find out that they're holding things back for some reason, and you can actually help solve that problem so you can move past it. And that helps create good relationships, of course,
Mm-hmm.
because you're looking out for each other and then you're able to be successful. And then on the bad actor side, you're going to be beating your head up against a wall. You're going to get turned into the higher ups for being a jerk when you didn't do anything, and it'll just ride with you, and it's terrible, speaking from experience. But what you can do is get the other people on your level and even above on your side. And so you kind of say what you're up against, you say what your ideas are, all of that. And then they're like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense." And then you can have a meeting with those people that agree with you, with these other bad actors that are trying to push up against it with misinformation and who knows what. And you can actually kind of get over the finish line there. And it's politics. I hate politics. I've
Mm-hmm.
always hated politics, and it's not helped me with my career, but I stay with my integrity, and I wouldn't change anything other than maybe just trying to play the game a little bit more without crossing my moral line.
Yeah. And I've had this advice given to me as well. I'm not a diplomat, right? I prefer people just being straight shooters and explaining as it is, because the first step to solving a problem is admitting that you have one.
Mhm.
Um, However, not everybody is that um, blunt. And also not a
Right.
lot there are some people who you have to look at it from the perspective of other people's experiences, right? Say for instance, there is a design problem, a fundamental design problem. Um, it's really hard to get to that conclusion first. You kind of have to go through all the other steps. You're like, okay, especially in production, you have to prove that it wasn't a mis-op. You have to prove that there was no human error in building the damn thing before
Mhm.
someone's going to take a look at the materials. And then once you prove the materials, then you have to look at the fundamental design. Mainly because a misops is one of the easiest things to pick out and to
Yeah.
fix. Um, Supply is trickier, but at least you can blame someone external. Um,
Mhm.
if it turns into like, oh, my engineering team fucked up, um, that's a bigger problem.
Right.
And it's good to kind of like, before you come at a group, you should do your own due diligence to prove that everything within the ability of the floor and the quality team and so on and so forth is shipshape.
Yep.
Disprove the other potentials, and then kind of get to the crux, because you don't really want to just start coming in guns a-blazing and pointing fingers and trying to fix stuff. It's like there's people who are very personally invested in the work that they're doing. Maybe it's the chief technical officer or a founder who, like, this is their baby. You can't just like come in and say your ideas are dumb or aren't going to work. You have to kind of show that you really, really tried on certain things, and it feels like wasted energy, but it's not, because now you have very smart, capable people who are still just human on your side, because you did try your darndest and prove to the best of your ability that you guys did the work that you could with the instructions that you were given. And then you allow people who have some decision making capabilities to look at what that you've presented and trust what you've presented, and then they're going to be on your side to actually start adjusting either the design or come back with more follow up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I did like what you had to say with sometimes there are bad actors, because certain behavior is rewarded if your team continues to look really, really good. It takes a while for it to be like, oh, do they look good because they made other groups look bad or because they're actually stellar workers? It's like hard to distinguish those things. But I do like let's just kind of get people together and we can present what each group is experiencing. And it's pretty easy to tease out from there that, like, oh, this team is underperforming because they weren't informed early enough to know that they had to get certain things done on time, or they did actually tell another group that they needed this, that, or the other, but it was kind of brushed off or ignored. And you take the like personality out of it to just say, what are the facts? Did this group have this or not? Did this group have this or not? And if it just really boils down to like, look, this group looks kind of shaky, so let's give them more support, rather than cutting the ground out from under them to make them look shaky. And it's a lot easier to just kind of get everybody on board together than it is to prove that a group is being mean to another group. You kind of just have to let that shake out naturally.
Yeah, and it will eventually, but it'll be painful in the process. And I mean, I got to the point where I had to bring certain individuals in with me to meet with a specific person because it was just pretty cutthroat and it was obvious there was tension. But if somebody else, and a lot of it was me being a woman, it was very obvious. So I would, when I say other people coming in with me, they were men, and they could then reiterate the things I was saying coming out of their beautiful male faces, and then we would be able to get things solved. I mean, it's reality and it sucks that it happens, but it happens.
Yeah. And I've also been in, I don't think it's because I'm a woman, but I do think it's because I didn't hold a lot of title. There are some people who are very title driven, and I'm not very title driven. But then again, I haven't had clout. So, but I have had instances when I have managers who acknowledge the work that I'm doing and see that I'm trying to get things done for the purpose of protecting the line and moving things forward for the company, right? I have managers who trust my work and my intuition, and I have them break the news, right? I collect the data, I summarize it to them, and I know that it's not because I'm a nobody, but it's because they are them, that coming from them, it will get more impact and more response faster than what I could have myself, because I'm going to have to do a lot more explanation, whereas like they're just inherently trusted. And that's just the reality of it. And that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I had, this has been a really great conversation because it's just super relevant and probably relevant for a lot of our listeners. But a few closing thoughts. So like, to me, like, building relationships is super important. Don't
Mhm.
just go to people when you need something. I mean, actually show empathy and care, because they will serve you. You have no idea when these people are going to be on a team with you, or you'll be working together. So not small talk, not the crappy like say hi but not even listen for an answer when you say how are you. I personally dislike small talk. I like it to be deeper than that. And then
Mhm.
influence to me requires, credibility, accountability, and empathy. And so the credibility piece is like, people know that you're willing to go in and get your hands dirty, and you're just asking them to do something because either they're more well suited to do it, or you guys have to share and delegate, and you've got a lot of work to do. And then naturally, humans like accountability, and I've seen so many leaders not want to play that piece, and that piece does not mean being a jerk. I've ran very successful teams, and the accountability piece, although it's tough to have those conversations sometimes, people really need it and want it and respect it. It's part of being a human, in my opinion.
What does accountability actually look like, though?
So it's telling people when they didn't meet your expectations, or
Mm.
coaching them, saying, "Oh, we had these requirements and I noticed you did it this other way, like, why, first of all, but then, okay, yeah, I need you to redo this and work on that." It's, telling people their growth areas and all of that. And again, I think it's easier as a leader and they're your direct reports, but I think it can also happen in the individual contribution role, because you're on a product team, you expected something, you didn't get it. Instead of just going to their boss, you want to like have that conversation with them, and you need to feel comfortable having that conversation with them. It'll
Yeah.
just help you be way more successful.
It's I also agree that, the instances where I didn't realize how important my work for getting something done for somebody else, like, if they immediately jump to my manager, that's gonna it's a little frustrating because it's like, "Oh, you didn't really make clear what you needed." So if you can make clear what the, expectation is, um, then it's easier later to hold accountable, right? We
Yep.
discussed what the need was, we set a date, we set a name, and that was your name.
Yep.
So the date has passed, where are we at?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and then one other thought was just like being respected versus being liked. I made the mistake of trying to be really tight and buddies with everybody in the beginning because I thought that would be successful, but it's two different things in my opinion. Would you agree, Justine?
Yeah, I think that you can straddle both, but, you shouldn't bend over backwards for coworkers to like you. I think that your work and your integrity will stand the test of time.
Yep, exactly. Well, thanks for the amazing discussion.
Likewise, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.